I'm here today to talk about mastering SaaS pricing. Now, we hear a tremendous amount of demand from our network and our portfolio for any insights and data and benchmarks about pricing. So we've done a lot of work on the subject, done a lot of research and surveying. We're really excited to share those results with you today. And as Mike said, my name is Kyle Poyar. I'm with OpenView. OpenView is a venture capital firm investing in expansion stage software companies like Datadog, Expensify, and many others. And I help the portfolio companies on growth and pricing initiatives. So let's dive in. Now, the title of this talk is Mastering SaaS Pricing. But before we can talk about, have we mastered SaaS pricing or how do we master SaaS pricing, I think we need to level set with ourselves of where we're starting today. And do we actually suck at pricing? And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, many of us do, and that's okay. Pricing doesn't get a lot of time and resources, especially in the earlier stages of companies. Pricing tends to be a gut-based judgment decision. It doesn't have the scientific and process rigor that many other aspects of product management or growing a great software company get. And so in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about why is pricing so important to get right and how to do it. So to that end, there's a quote from Steve Ballmer that I really like. Steve is the longtime CEO of Microsoft, and he says, "This thing called price is really, really important. The only difference between companies that succeed and fail is that the winners figured out how to make money. The winners thought deeply through the revenue, price, and business model." So even though this is a product conference, it's not just about building a better mousetrap that's going to allow you to stand out and win against your competitors. You need to be thinking deeply about the revenue, price, and business model as well. And at OpenView, we do think very deeply about pricing. If you've been to our content site, which is OpenView Labs, we're publishing content about pricing strategy regularly. Here's a few examples of the content we put out, if you want to check it out. On the far left is our state of SaaS pricing. We surveyed over 1,000 unique SaaS companies and asked them questions about how they approach pricing and where they are in their maturity. There's a lot of great insights from that survey that I'm going to be sharing in this presentation. And on the far right is actually our book, Mastering SaaS Pricing, and you can download that as an ebook on our website as well. We also have a few printed copies, so you can email me if you want just one sent to you. And beyond the content, I'm working regularly with our portfolio companies and our prospects on how they can optimize pricing strategy in their company's journeys. So I've helped more than half of our portfolio optimize their packaging and pricing, and generally it has a really significant impact on their revenue. And regardless of where you are in your journey, if you're an early stage company, if maybe you've raised Series A, Series B, you're in the expansion stage, if you're a growth stage company, or you're a more mature business, there's always room to improve pricing. Pricing is not something that you can set and forget. Pricing is something that needs to evolve as the company evolves. And if you don't evolve your pricing, it could have really detrimental impacts on your business. First Round Capital released their 2017 State of Startup Report at the end of last year. Ton of great insights in that report. But what stood out to me was that they looked at what separates founders who struggle to raise capital compared to founders that say raising capital is a piece of cake. Those who struggled to raise capital were 3 times more likely to say they monetized too late, twice as likely to say that they picked the wrong business model, and 40% more likely to say their burn rate was too high. Now, what's the common denominator? It's pricing and monetization. They weren't deep in thinking through the revenue, price, and business model. And so looking at our survey data, my work with our portfolio companies, and just having the vantage point of a VC and getting to see companies grow, these are the top 5 pricing mistakes that you're probably making. And if you could correct these, you'd unlock tremendous value for your business. Pricing mistake number 1 is that you're too cheap. And it's really easy to understand how this happens, right? You build a great product, you love it, you want people to use that product, and you don't want anything to get in the way of that adoption. But the real fact is, business buyers, unlike consumers, aren't that price sensitive, and you can use that to your advantage. I want to share an example. This is StatusPage. Many of you probably use them. They're a status and incident communication tool, essentially a website to share if your applications and websites are working or not. And when StatusPage graduated from Y Combinator in 2013, they must have thought, this is a pretty tactical tool, because they launched with 2 price points, free and $49 per month. Now, putting myself in their shoes, a couple things become really apparent. First is that it's hard to build a long-lasting, sustainable business off of free and $49 a month. you'd have to sign up hundreds of thousands of paying customers and millions of free users to make that math work. Second is that their product was providing real value for their customers. They could see that in the product usage data, in the engagement, and the logos that they were signing up. So seeing that gave them the confidence to raise their prices. They got rid of the free version, raised their top price point to $250 per month. And that worked really well. They didn't see any impacts to conversion or churn, so they did it again in 2015, and they did it again in 2016. In fact, their top price point is so high I had to change the y-axis, because otherwise it wouldn't fit on there. So the prices are now up to 30 times higher, and this allowed them to really grow their business. They were able to bootstrap to $2.5 million in ARR in just 2 years, led to a successful acquisition by Atlassian. And something that I think is really important to know is that if the only reason you're winning deals is because you're the lowest price solution on the market, you really haven't found your product market fit. But if you can raise prices and customers still see the value in what you're providing, you really nailed your product market fit and you have a great business. And a ton of attention gets paid to acquisition. You see so many articles about acquisition strategies, maybe even about retention, but the data shows pricing is the most powerful growth lever that you have at your disposal. So it's incredibly important to focus on that. Pricing mistake number 2 is that you pick the wrong value metric. Now, many of us instinctively know what a value metric is. It's the metric that determines how much you pay for a product or a service, or how much you charge your customers for that product or service. And historically, that's just defaulted to seats. And the legacy behind that is thinking about on-premise solutions or desktop software where you actually install the software in an individual machine. And the closest analog to that in the cloud-based world was a seat. When we look at the data, we actually see seats are not the only game in town anymore. And in fact, less than half of SaaS companies have a seat-based pricing model at this point. Although it does matter what kind of software that you provide. So if you're a horizontal application, like a Salesforce or Marketo, seats are still the most popular metric. Although Marketo doesn't really charge based on seats, they charge based on how many contacts you have that you want to market to, which is effectively a usage-based model where they get more money from their customers as their customers are successful with marketing. And then with vertical applications like a Viva or a Mindbody or infrastructure software like an AWS or a New Relic, usage-based pricing is far more popular. Once developers started to buy products on a usage model and pay for exactly what they use, they wanted to buy every other product like that. And so, when you think about the value metric, it's important to think about something other than seats and what's really the metric that's right for your business, because it can help you, number 1, differentiate against competitors, and number 2, generate more revenue. And I want to share a couple of examples of that. The first is Expensify. So Expensify is a mobile-first expense reporting solution. Many of you probably use it. We invested in Expensify about 3 years ago. And they differentiate from competitors with active user pricing. So you only pay based on the people in your organization that are actually submitting expense reports. Now, this is really different from the legacy competitors in the market. They charge purely based on seats. And that caused buyers to go through these weird budgeting hurdles where they were like, well, sales team definitely need to buy them seats. Services team, yeah, they're out in the field to buy them seats. Executive team needs seats, but do we need the HR department to have these? Do we need the marketing team? And they would have to hoard what seats that they bought and who got them. Expensify said, don't worry about that at all. Roll this out to your entire organization, and we'll only charge you based on what you use. So this allowed Expensify to disrupt the existing players in the market. It also made them more sticky within an account and allowed them to grow faster within an account. Another example is a company called VTS. VTS is a commercial real estate company that we invested in about 2 years ago, and they provide software to manage large commercial real estate portfolios. And they sell to both the owners of those portfolios as well as the brokers. And when VTS started out, they charged on a per building basis. It didn't matter if you were owning the Empire State Building, a mid-sized commercial office building, or a single-tenant building, you had one fixed price. And initially, that actually worked pretty well. It was simple to explain to customers. It drove a lot of sales velocity in the business. But over time, there were a lot of challenges with that model, right? I mean, for the largest customers, they were getting feedback like prices just a drop in the bucket for the value that they were getting. And then for smaller building owners, they really balked at the price and didn't see the value in it. But VTS introduced a per square foot model to capture both ends of the market. And almost immediately afterwards, their average revenue per customer increased by over 70% just by changing their metric and aligning it with customer value. So the pricing metric, the value metric, can differentiate and really lead to real revenue improvements. Pricing mistake number 3 is that you make it hard to buy. I wanted to look at our benchmarking data to see what separates the fastest growing software companies from everyone else. And one thing is clear is that the fastest growers are really great at landing new customers. Their CAC payback period is just 7 months on average compared to 15 months for slower growing companies. And that's because they're easy to do business with and they sell to customers the way the customers want to buy. Now, I want to share a pricing page. Is this easy for you to understand what you're getting for what you're paying for? I mean, like, look at this. Do you even know what you're even buying? I mean, at this $29.99 plus $20 plus $20, it's kind of a mess, right? And this is the simple version of the pricing page. If you click See Offer Details to actually see what's included, this is what it looks like. Not so pretty. Surprise, surprise, this is Spectrum. They're a cable company. And cable companies could get away with this because historically they've had regional monopolies over selling their services. Software companies don't have that luxury. The latest data shows that software companies have 9 competitors on average. If your pricing page looked like this, your prospects would immediately go to another competitor. I want to share another example. This is a little bit better. This company's performed pretty well. You might have heard of them. It's Slack. And Slack does a few things that I think are really worth emulating. First is that they clearly state their value proposition. So even though it's a pricing page, you should never miss out on an opportunity to indicate who you're for and why they should buy. And Slack also noticed that their different audiences have different needs, right? So teams care about different things than large enterprises who care about role-based access control and advanced security and all this customization. So they have different pricing pages for those 2 audiences. You also see here that in bold, big font is the price per month when paid annually. They still communicate the price per month when billed monthly. It's a higher price. You might see this is deceptive, but they're actually just highlighting the good news and trying to get customers to buy the plan that they're going to be most successful with. I also like that Slack is really clear about the benefits of each plan and who should buy it. And this isn't rocket science, but there's so many pricing pages that are a confusing array of checkboxes, jargon, and features that you've never heard of, and it's incredibly frustrating to find out what you want to buy. And finally, Slack noticed that their pricing page is their best performing sales rep. And so this, like any other sales rep, it needs to be equipped with answers to any lingering doubts or any questions that might come up from a prospect. I want to share another example, and this is of a company that actually changed their business model to be easier to do business with, and it's had a really amazing result. And this is Logical. Logical is a legal tech business. We sit on the board along with Jason Lemkin. And when Logical started out, they sold only on annual subscriptions. And this worked pretty well initially. They signed up pretty large enterprise deals like Salesforce, the city of Boston, the city of Chicago. But they kept getting consistent feedback from prospects that, it's really hard for me to figure out how much I'm going to use and commit to a whole year when I don't know what my clients are going to need, and I don't want to make that commitment. Or I want to try this out on a specific case before I convince everyone else, all the other partners in my law firm, to roll this out. So Logical decided to introduce a pay-as-you-go option where there would be absolutely no commitment. People could upload whatever data they wanted, and they only pay based on how much they use. Within a few weeks of rolling this out, they signed up more pay-as-you-go customers than they had signed up subscription customers over 4 years. This is really, truly hockey stick growth. And I say this as it's not a vanity metric. The results are real. On the back of pay-as-you-go, they were able to raise a $25 million Series B round earlier this year from NEA. It closed in just 17 days. And that's because they were finally selling to customers the way the customers wanted to buy. Pricing mistake number 4 is that your upsell path is broken. Now again, when we look at the data about what separates the fastest growing companies from everyone else, the fastest growers have a little bit better customer retention or logo retention, but where they really excel is their net dollar retention. And they actually see net negative churn. Now this phenomenon has been talked about a lot. It's where you can actually turn off all of your sales and marketing spend and still grow as a company because your customers are spending more over time. And this enables really efficient long-term growth for a business. You might be thinking, this is something that's the product's job or the customer success team's job, but pricing has a major role in your whether a business can see negative churn. And I want to share a couple of examples. The first is New Relic. New Relic is an application performance monitoring tool. They're a publicly traded company, and they report 123% net dollar retention. So this is even better than best of breed. And New Relic charges based on usage, but I want you to imagine if they charge based on seats. So startups, as they were hiring more engineers, they'd pay a little bit more, and certainly more mature companies would hire engineers at a slower rate, so their growth would be slower, but it wouldn't really be dramatic growth, right? Like Instagram, before they were bought by Facebook, had tens of millions of users, this huge amount of traction, but they sold to Facebook for $1 billion. You know how many employees they had? 13. So if New Relic charged Instagram based on users, they would be getting pennies from them. Instead, New Relic charges based on the actual usage. So they ask for your instance size, your runtime, and your quantity, and that determines the price. And this allows them to scale as their customers grow and generate customers of their own and grow the size of their applications. Another way of using pricing and packaging for customer growth is through feature-based packaging. And I think Intercom does a really great example of this. Intercom is a customer communication tool. They have different products depending on whether you're trying to acquire users, support them, or engage them. And they use a tactic that's called good, better, best packages. So their starting package, their good package, has all the essential things you need to be successful with Intercom. And then they upsell customers as they get more sophisticated through their better plan, which has more customization, more of the features that an advanced user is going to need. And in fact, 68% of their businesses now choose Pro, according to Intercom. And then they upsell even further into the best package, which has revenue reporting, VIP access, really advanced features. And they don't just stop there. They have packages that bundle their different features across their products to drive even more feature-based upsell in the business. And so that's their new offering, all of Intercom. Pricing mistake number 5 is that your pricing is static, not dynamic. And you go through a lot of different phases in your company's growth, from seed stage where you have a single product, simple pricing, you're adding new products and new features constantly, you're increasing the audience that you're going after, you're probably moving into international markets. You can't leave pricing alone. Pricing needs to evolve as your company evolves. And I want to share an example. That's Salesforce. Many of you probably use them. You are familiar with their pricing, probably not happy with it. But you might not know what Salesforce looked like 20 years ago when they were a startup of their own. And when Salesforce started out, their main product, their Pro plan, was $50 per user per month. Over the following years, they introduced their enterprise plan and then their unlimited plan, and also raised prices significantly. So now their price point increased by 6x. Enterprise is the most popular plan, and they get a lot of additional revenue from add-on streams, from their marketplace, and through other products. And you might look at this and say, wow, Salesforce is really gouging their customers. But the way I see it is their relationship with their customers changed. CRM used to be a nice-to-have product, and now it's a mission-critical application and your key system of record and engagement with your customers. So they're monetizing that extra value that they've created for their customers. I really like this quote from Monica Saha. Monica was a longtime executive at Zuora and architect behind their pricing. And she says it's never 100% done. The single most valuable lesson she's learned is that you have to be ready to constantly iterate on both your pricing and packaging. Successful companies are those that think of pricing the same way they think about product development. Their pricing is in a constant state of evolution, right? So what now? Now, going back to Steve Ballmer, we know pricing and packaging is super important, and when he thinks about winners and losers in this competitive market, the winners are the ones thinking deeply about the revenue, price, and business model. When we've surveyed companies, we've seen most companies don't take pricing seriously. So we asked, have you done pricing research? 45% said no, 48% have done cursory research, and only 8% have done in-depth pricing research. This would indicate that only 8% of you out there really want to win in a competitive market. When you look at price testing, the figures are even worse. 64% of companies have never done price testing before, and a lot of the companies that think that they've done price testing, it hasn't really been a true test. And when you conduct pricing research and do testing, just like you do in any other aspect of product management, you get really great nuggets of learnings from your customers that can drive big changes for the business. And this one is a real-life quote from a customer. They said, "The price is not material enough to be a factor in the decision. It's not even a blip on the radar." And this is what I heard from a customer of VTS's. And just hearing this quote from a customer, this convinced the CEO of VTS to change their pricing metric to see such dramatic growth as a result. And you might be thinking, how do I get started in this? Who should be doing this work? Many of you probably don't have a chief pricing officer or a vice president of pricing. Most organizations don't have people dedicated to pricing. So if you're just getting started, I've seen pricing fall into marketing and product, finance, sales, operations. It's kind of fallen everywhere, and there's pros and cons with each. But I would argue for this room, product teams need to be incorporating pricing when they're thinking about new product development. And when they're thinking, should we launch this new product? Are people actually valuing it enough that they're going to be paying for it? You need to be thinking about pricing throughout the process of developing new products. And also, if you don't have anyone who's a subject matter expert on pricing, you need someone in the organization that's responsible and accountable for doing the work of pricing and evangelizing that across an organization. So to wrap up, my takeaways, first off, B2B buyers aren't that price sensitive, so don't be too cheap. You have room to raise prices. Almost every company, every SaaS company I work with has had opportunities to raise prices from when they were founded. And you need to pay attention to your value metric. Don't just default to seats. You want to look at what value metric is going to help you differentiate from competitors and sell more of your product. And in this competitive environment, you need to be more customer friendly. You need to be selling to customers the way they want to buy. Even if the finance leaders think, we need annual contracts, annual commitments, pay-as-you-go or more customer-friendly billing models might actually be a way to unlock growth that you didn't know could be there. And then driving expansion within your accounts is extremely important for long-term growth, and usage-based pricing and feature packaging are great ways of doing that. And finally, you need to be experimenting and iterating on your pricing. Should be in a constant state of evolution, never 100% done. That's it. Thank you.